Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Model Building Start to Finish. This is John, and I'm here with Dan. We're working on this boxcar kit. So what are we going to do this week, Dan?
I think last time we mentioned we were going to do some weathering, but before I do the weathering, I want to finish painting the parts that are still metal that I put on last time.
Sure, that makes sense.
And then I also want to put some decals on the car because one of the things, especially back in this era, you'd see a lot were reweigh stencils, where they would reweigh the car and they would stencil over the existing weights and put new weights on there. So I saw some pictures in one of my boxcar books that shows that on this type of car. Even though this model isn't 100% authentic, I still think it would be a neat look to duplicate.
Sure.
So I've already coated the sides of the car in the reporting mark area with some glossy clear gloss.
Yeah, that makes the decal set flat, right?
Right. So I think we'll do the painting of the little parts and the reweigh stencils and then see where we're at.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
Yeah. So I'm going to start on the top and I'm going to paint those corner grab irons silver.
Yeah, those are that raw or unpainted, what was it again?
Phosphor bronze wire.
Phosphor bronze, yeah.
Yeah. So just touch them with a brush.
So it's okay to paint with a brush, right? Because they're just little sort of inconsequential parts. I mean, taping this off and spraying it would be a pain.
It would, yeah. No, little parts are fine with the brush. I would never paint like the sides of the boxcar with the brush. It would look terrible. I've seen some people try that and it always looks bad to me. But just little parts like this is okay. I'm also going to put a little bit of silver on the glad hands on the ends of the hoses.
Oh, right, because you nipped those off last time because they were too low.
Right, I cut them a little short, but really you'll see the paint. So as long as the paint's there, it'll look all right. Okay, so this has nothing to do with the prototype, but one thing I've started to do with all my model cars is to put an inspection mark on them after I've checked the wheel gauge, made sure they have a 3-point suspension, made sure the coupler height is correct, and that the trip pins are adjusted and all of that. I put a little dot of green paint on the bottom.
Oh, the green dot inspection program.
Yes, my green dot inspection program. So this car passes all of that, so I'm just going to put a little dot of paint on the bottom, and that'll let me know that I've already checked this car out.
So I've had to overexpose the picture just a little bit so you can see the parts that are going to be painted here. But yeah, go ahead, Dan.
So now I'm just going to paint all the parts that need to be black.
So that's the brake platform. Is that what you call that?
Right.
So again, they're just small parts, so it's okay to use a brush for that.
Right. So in addition to the brake platform and the grab irons, I also painted the uncoupling lever and the roof walk supports and also the trip pins.
Oh, okay.
Black.
I didn't know you'd paint trip pins.
Sometimes I find if they're painted, it's a little easier to make them look like they're not there.
You need the invisible paint from the old Bugs Bunny cartoons.
Yeah. So anyway, for the reweigh stencil on this car, what SP did on cars like this first was to paint out the existing weights here and this date over here with some boxcar red paint.
Ew, okay. Didn't expect to hear that sound, but...
Yeah, there was also a little square of boxcar red paint over here. Now, there's a couple ways you could do this. One would be to actually mask it and spray it with paint.
That's what I would expect.
Right. However, I'm going to do it with some microscale trim film.
Oh, is that like a decal for that?
Yeah, it's a decal.
Cool.
They make decal sheets in solid colors, and they actually make a boxcar red that I think is pretty close to what was on these cars.
That's a lot faster probably than taping it and spraying it, huh?
Yeah, it should be pretty easy. So all I need to do is measure this and figure out how big the decal needs to be. So I don't want to cover this part, the load limit and load lightweight, but I do want to cover these numbers.
Yeah.
So it looks like it's about 5 1/4 feet is what I need.
Scale feet.
Scale feet. Yeah, this is HO scale. This is an HO scale rule. And I think up and down, it's about maybe 1 foot.
Oh, so it's going to be a solid block.
Yeah, well, it's actually the black is thicker up here and then it's thinner over here because it only covers this part.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they used as little paint as possible.
Trying to economize
I don't know, or just
the paint expense.
Yeah, or something. I don't know. But anyway, so I got to cut out a piece of decal. So this is my piece of trim film, and now I just need to cut out a couple of patches that will be the appropriate size for the side of the car. I'm going to start just by cutting this end thing off.
That white piece, huh?
Yeah. So I've got the decals wet, and I'm going to start by putting some microset on the area where I'm going to put the decal.
Isn't this that stuff that sucks the decal down onto the plastic? Basically,
Actually, microset's actually a wetting agent. It helps the decal float a little bit better.
Oh, I'm thinking of
Microsol is the one that
Microsol. That's it.
is the one that'll make it settle down.
Yeah, vaguely remembered from our detailing and weathering rolling stock videos that we made a number of years ago. I know there were 2 micros. I couldn't remember which was which.
Yeah, first you use the microset under the decal, and then later you use the microsol over it. I'll do the same thing over here with this little square. There's not actually any writing on this. I'm not really sure what the purpose of this was. Probably to cover something.
Well, probably not graffiti, because there wasn't any back then on trains.
Not much to speak of, no. Or usually if there was any, it was done with chalk or something, so it didn't last very long.
What, the graffiti vandals had some respect for someone else's property?
Yeah, well, there was one famous one. It was, I think it's called Bozo Texino or something.
The sombrero guy?
Yeah. But I think most of that stuff was done with chalk, so it didn't last. So now these have had a chance to dry a little bit. I'm going to put some microsol on the top, and that'll help them settle down into the model.
So the reason you sprayed the car with gloss ahead of time was for the decals, wasn't it?
Right. Decals adhere much better to a glossy surface than a matte surface.
Yeah.
Especially if you have... Now, this decal has no clear edge around the edge. You know, it's like if you cut some decals out, they have a little bit of clear around the edges. And you can get silvering, which is what happens when little microscopic air bubbles are trapped under the decal film.
Yeah.
And that happens a lot if you try to put decals on a flat surface. So if you put them on a glossy surface, that doesn't happen as much. Now, I did notice that these aren't as opaque as I'd like, so I could possibly put another layer of this on there, or I could just put the numbers over it. I'll just do that because I think by the time it's weathered and everything, you won't really be able to see it. So now the red patches have pretty much conformed after putting some microsol on them. So I can put on the new stencils, and I'm taking this from decal sheet, microscale decal sheet 871332, which is Southern Pacific boxcar data markings.
It's amazing to me that they have so many specific, or decals that specific, but they do.
Yeah. So this is a new load limit, and we're going to put this kind of where the old one was.
Yeah, it looks good. It actually looks better, I think, with that red patch and the white writing compared with just having black writing on the silver like it was before.
Yeah, well, this is pretty much what some of the photos look like.
Yeah. So is the idea here is that the decals and everything there is wet enough that you can just kind of scooch it around a bit until it's in the right position?
Right. Again, I put some microset, and that helps me move them around until they're in the right place.
Okay. There it is.
Yeah, so I've got the decals on. Now, again, this car is not 100% prototypically accurate, and I didn't have a photograph of this particular car.
It would be impossible to.
Well, but I mean the same number.
Yeah.
So I just did something that looks plausible.
Yep.
Following photographs of other cars that I do have. So basically, I'm saying that this car was reweighed in Sacramento in September of 1959, and they re-stenciled the car accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked some stencils that were close to, but not exactly the same as the weight data that was already on there.
Yeah. Although it wouldn't have mattered. You could have picked the same ones. You can't see it.
That's true. That's true. But anyway, it's close enough, I think, to be plausible.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's pretty much what I wanted to achieve, and I think that's, the decals seem to be pretty much settled down now. I've used microsol on them to make them conform, and so now we need to dull coat the car and we can start weathering it.
Okay. So we have the dull coat now, a few layers, right? Of dull coat. And all of this is looking very familiar to me.
Yeah, I usually like to use about 3 coats of dull coat
Yeah.
to make sure that everything's really sealed and gives a good base for further weathering.
Right. Especially powders that otherwise will just slip off.
Right. They really need to have a matte surface to adhere to. Okay, I think that's a good place to stop for this week.
All right. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks.